In this video, I'm going to show you how to do an exercise that will familiarize yourself with the triceps muscles. First thing I'm going to do is go over a little bit of anatomy. There are three heads to the triceps muscle group, and one of them crosses the shoulder. For practical purposes and exercise purposes, that basically means that you're not going to fully activate all of those muscles just by bending at the elbow. You're also going to have to move the orientation of the elbow in relationship to the shoulder. So for the first part of this exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to put all of the triceps muscles on stretch. And I'm going to do that by raising the elbows. Again, I want to increase the distance between the center of my chest and the tip of the elbows. If I lift the chest at the same time, I'm not going to be stretching the triceps. I'm actually just working the trunk and those muscles there. So as you're doing this, you want to resist inclination to let the chest rise. That's going to allow you to get further stretch in the triceps. And then there's the standard part that everyone else is probably more familiar with as far as flexion of the elbow. So you want to maintain flexion of the elbow as the elbows rise up. Keep the chest in a neutral position for the most part as best you can in this part of the exercise. What we're going to do from here is that at a certain point, your hands are going to hit the back of your neck. You're not really going to be able to lower them anymore. At this point, I'm going to let the hips go forward. I'm not going to try to create and continue the movement by lifting the chest. From this point forward, I'm letting the hips rock forward, and what I'm going to be doing is creating space behind me for the fingertips to continue lowering downward. That's going to allow gravity to help me out with the exercise so that I can focus on just fine-tuning the movement instead of the bulk part, which gravity is going to do for me. So I'm looking for a peak stretch of the tricep muscles. I'm arching into it just a little bit, letting the shoulders stay open, letting the fingers relax downward. And then what I'm going to do at this point as well, just so I don't have to put any additional focus on my neck, is that the forearms on my pinky sides are going to be supporting my head. So this is going to do two things. One is supporting the head. The other part is going to allow you to use your head to leverage further stretch and increase your range of motion. If I bring my hands behind here, with my head down slightly, I'm propping my forearms against my head so that when I use the neck muscles to lift the chin and lift the head, I'm actually leveraging my fingers downward and leveraging a rotation at the shoulder and the elbows. So that's going to help you at the end range of motion. So again, I'm just start from the middle position, bringing the hands up and behind, and then when you want to continue the range of motion, allowing gravity to help you out a little bit, go forward into it and get a slight occipital tilt, lifting the chin upward, and this should help you isolate a stretch. You may feel it at the shoulders or in the tricep muscle belly or somewhere in that region, depending on your muscles and how they're coordinated. And then from here, if you feel any muscle activity or stretch, you want to keep that active on the way down and bring yourself back very deliberately. So this is going to look different for everyone, depending on which muscles are looser, and it could vary even moment to moment, depending on how warmed up they are through the exercise. So my focus on this part is to continually shorten the triceps muscle group. So what I'm going to do is continue this movement, and I'm going to start with extension at the elbows, driving the head upward, opening the chest. And again, at the first part of the movement, the focus was to get the elbows forward, up, and rotating around in this direction. Now I wanted to go in the opposite direction so that when I come back to here, I get that rotational force. I'm going to be able to get a peak contraction of the triceps muscles in this position. Again, if you're too upright and you pull back too much with your hands, you're going to over-engage the rear deltoid muscles, and you're not going to be able to fire the triceps as effectively. You're going to hit an end range of motion. It's primarily going to come from your balance. If you force through the movement and you're maintaining the upright position, you're just kind of jamming a limited range of motion. So again, in this position here, I'm trying not to pull back very hard. I'm trying to open up from the core, from the axial skeleton, opening forward, and I'm not pulling back so much as I'm really just trying to hone peak muscle contraction with the triceps across the shoulder. There may be a slight bit of extension, very minimal, and the more you practice, the better you'll be able to get at it. So from there, you keep that peak contraction, and you're going to keep the muscle activity. You don't want the muscles to soften up as you come back. So again, with the buoy exercise I described earlier, I'm going to sit through the hips to initiate the downward movement. The downward movement of my spine, have a little bit of displacement. The hands are going to rise up softly as I keep the tension at the triceps. My elbows are going to scoop underneath. And then when I press through the feet, I'm going to drive the head upward and allow the elbows to come forward and up. And then from here, again, my forearms are pretty much coming into contact with the back of my neck. What I'm going to do from that point is roll the hips forward and up to initiate a back bend. If I wanted to augment and increase the stretch, all I have to do is just provide a little bit of extra tilt from my head, lifting the chin, and that's going to leverage the arms because they've already been put at a good stretch. And again, as you're doing this exercise, you don't want to lift the chest too much. I mean, everyone has limited range of motion, and when you do get in this position, you are able to get better leverage from gravity, which is why I'm doing this at this point here. Again, ideally, you can always readjust as well. Really get the elbows back, separate the distance between the center of the chest and the elbows. And any amount of that you do, you can augment at the end, fine-tune it with the tilt of your head to move the forearms. Any stretch that you feel here, again, one more time, you can feel that muscle activity. Keep it active. Take a good breath in. Sit through the hips to initiate the downward movement. Keeping continuous tension slightly on the area that you were trying to stretch. And then when I get down to this movement, I'm going to start with extension of the elbows, extension at the shoulders, opening up. Again, I'm pressing through the feet, driving the head up, moving the hips forward. I'm not trying to force my arms behind me and over-tightening some muscles. If you tighten them early, you're going to ruin the kinetic chain, and it's going to interfere with your peak muscle contraction. So you want the muscles to be fairly relaxed until you get to an end range of motion. Okay? And then one more thing I'm going to mention here is that because one of the heads of the triceps crosses the shoulders, you also will get a different peak muscle contraction based on the rotation of the humerus, which is the upper arm. Sometimes you can get a good feel for it by initiating through supination and pronation. If you just move through the forearms, it doesn't really do it. You are going to have to change the orientation of this cubital fossa, where you can see right here in the elbow. Really get a sense of the change of that position, and it's going to help you fine-tune the peak muscle contraction of the triceps. And if I keep this in the same spot and I just do this, I'm not going to feel too much of a difference. I have to move this point here, either inward or outward at the end range of motion. Sometimes it helps to make a little bit of a fist to bring your awareness to the extremities, but doing this type of movement at the end range of motion, you can feel for which fibers in the muscle belly are most inactive and which ones need more attention than others. Once you get the point that's kind of most intense to your liking, you're going to maintain that position, soften the hips, lower them back down, and then control the negative rep, lowering through the hips, letting the elbows scoop down and underneath, drive the strength from the legs, push the head up, and continue the movement. Generally, I would recommend 2 sets of breaths. So from here, I'm going to breathe out on the way down. And then in during the contraction. And then I'm going to breathe out on the way down again. And in on the way up. If you want, you can add a breath at this component as well if you feel like you need more focus on it. So breathing in on the way up, you can breathe out as you tilt the chin up, increasing the stretch. Breathe in, lower through the hips, out. And then breathe in, drive strength through the legs, push the head upward as the primary focus. Then, once you've leveraged yourself, you're able to get a peak contraction with the triceps, and then breathe out, soften the hips, initiate the downward movement. So I'll keep posting some more videos if you have any questions.